Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This is Seeking Media Productions, bring you another TV series review.
Well, this is going to be a season for now. We ain't this
Seasons.
Season. This is a seasons review because thankfully this is not the end. We got so much more left to go, and of course we're talking about Interview with the Vampire. And when we delve into these, movies or adaptations of one of my favorite authors, that being Anne Rice, of course I'm geeked out. Now, when AMC first announced that it was going to tackle Interview with the Vampire, I had mixed feelings. On one hand, I was overjoyed that finally somebody was recognizing how wonderful the intricate worlds and and stories that Anne Rice has developed within her titular Vampire Chronicles has it just deserves to be done. Of course, I already had adaptations before, and he had movies, that being from the very first adaptation of the Interview with the Vampire,
And that was from Neil Jordan, director. People who know that was done back in 1994. Starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, two still major.
And Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, Kirsten Dunst, like one of her earlier roles.
Mm-hmm.
That can be said about. That's slightly more faithful to the text
In contemporary aspects. I definitely enjoyed that film. However, I do have my gripes with it in and of itself. Then, of course, down the road, we also got Queen of the Damned. That one was starring, Stuart Townsend. That was another adaptation of the Vampire Chronicles. Not necessarily as favorably looked upon by the fandom, more by general audiences in general. Instead.
Nice soundtrack.
Amazing soundtrack. I mean, I feel as though I still listen to a lot of the music and the sound, songs that comes from that soundtrack till this day. But how does AMC really work when we talk about this particular show and with Anne Rice's world?
So AMC, after a long bidding war, on just trying to acquire Anne Rice's novel,
she shopped around everywhere. She was determined to get her stuff back out there for everybody to see, and I'm so happy she did.
And from AMC Studios, they not only snagged up the television rights, but also film rights. So we're gonna keep an eye out for any theatrical releases from there.
I sure am.
But for them, they decided to join in on the Hollywood trend of doing cinematic universes.
Yeah, and, at this point, it's a dime a dozen these dang days. Everybody wants to get on the bandwagon because we totally understand. If you could get them done right, they're amazing cash grabs.
And in this form, with using Anne Rice's novels, they developed the Immortal universe.
Ew, let's just hope that it doesn't crash and burn just like,
And it's already having some lot of hits and misses.
Yeah, of course, for me specifically, again, you have the Interview with the Vampire show, and then they swagged off and did the Lies of the Mayfair Witches with just the Mayfair Witches, and then of course
they're upcoming from at the time of this video, the Talamasca and Night Island.
They're trying to really, go. AMC is really betting hard on this particular series of shows. So, fingers crossed, it really works out for them. But where does Interview with the Vampire really fall? Now, specifically the story of Interview with the Vampire, if you have not read the books or have not watched the earlier adaptations, is very much centered around one particular, a few different characters. But for primarily this first season, or at least this first couple of seasons, it centers itself on an individual known as Louis de Pondelac, played by Jacob Anderson, and of course Daniel Malloy, who's being played by Eric Bogosian. And it's really a interview that's taking place where Daniel is a human who's contracted by Louis to basically allow him to tell his whole life story, how he became a vampire, his earlier years, and basically where has it led to him now.
The story, the show, like the book, is split into two different time periods. Now, at the time of the book's release,
Mm-hmm.
that was back in 1976 when Anne Rice released the book. Of course, the present day during that time period was 1970s, around that time. And when they did the past sections, it was mostly done in early Americana life.
We're on like the early 1800s and 1700s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
However, fortunately, or at least fortunately, it depends on how you really look at it. Considering the contemporary aspects of the lifestyle that happened during those time periods, and really centers itself around the concept of the slave period. The show decided to take itself in a different direction.
Decided to push it much more further to present day,
Mm-hmm.
like during the time of this video, like this current to present day to the 2020s.
Exactly.
And the past segments are now in 1920s.
Now, still centering, dealing with the gravitations of race in it, especially when we take into the concept of the character of Louis de Pontelec, where that individual was originally written in the books and in earlier adaptations played by white men. This time, Louis is turned into a black Creole individual who, instead of being a slave owner, is a brothel owner, a pimp.
Similar line of work-ish.
And still dealing with the concept of human bodies, but in this case, is dealing more on the concept of pleasure.
From what we get here to see, at least from the show, is an exercise, and when adapting a story, thematically compared to adapting a story from what is from the page.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel as though the strength of this show for the changes they do structurally and contextually, they do a really great job of expressing thematic storytelling and how it uses its changes to its benefit.
That's right. And these changes are not necessarily to the judgment of how the show really plays out. Even though this show definitely took its own unique twists and turns on the original source material, the heart of what was really driving behind the aspects of the show still exists. This is very much still telling the whirlwind romance and downfall between two vampires of the same sex, that being Louis de Pontelec and his maker, Lestat de Loncourt.
Yes, that's like from what the books and even when the earlier 1994 film, a relationship that was more vague to a sense, but had a lot more of a subtext to its more LGBTQ themes.
This particular show goes ham on the wall. They do not, shrink away from the concept that these two individuals were in a committed relationship with one another. But I feel this show lives and dies on the backs of whom these characters are being played by.
And I feel as though when they decided to do the show, it knows, it's able to do changes in the sense that it still honors what is being, it was from what Anne Rice wrote, as in when it met, it's certain instances where it plays with memory.
Yes.
A lot because of his interview, that's going back and forth time periods, and it plays with what the audiences sees from what we saw in the first season, and come to the second season, we start seeing a much more recontextualized version of what very major events that follow.
You really understand just how much of an unreliable narrator the character of Louis truly is. We are really going through this odyssey of the journey that it was his life, and where he feels now, how certain things played out in the past, and how they have really reverberate throughout his future, and the future of various other individuals that revolves around his circles.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good time to discuss the characters.
Where originally, again, I had my my own particular original worries for this series, considering how much they were changing in certain directions. After seeing the very first episode and falling towards the end of the last season, wow, they have really blown me out of the water with what they've done. part of this because of the casting. Again, Louis Dupont-Delac being played by Jacob Anderson. What a revelation! Of course, we our first introduction with this particular actor came from Game of Thrones when he was playing Grey Worm, and he showed such promise on that show. Within Interview with the Vampire, he is given a wide berth to really exercise his acting talents, and it is completely on display here.
Yeah, he was able to deliver some very strong monologues that express very complex emotions. How they decided to rewrite the character Louis as a black man living in the down south, and how it even, like through the context lens of also being a vampire, the struggles and tribulations on that part.
It is so amazing how he's able to emphasize all those feelings through, again, just dialogue alone, and just the swagger that he brings onto the screen. Everything about him is a revelation whenever you actually sit down and actually witness what he's putting to screen.
Mind you, Louis from the books, and even when Brad Pitt portrayed him, not really necessarily more of a likable character.
Of course not. And whenever you're dealing with the concept of the reluctant vampire, when I feel as though Anne Rice is really, is a hallmark for being able to relate, or at least the sympathetic variation of the vampire, which he is really credited for. With Jacob Anderson's portrayal of Louis, he is very much still that exact same character from the books, if not only just a little bit more outspoken in certain respects.
A lot more agency to the role.
He is very much an individual who still struggles with his ties to humanity, which is very essential to the character of Louis, an individual who sympathizes with whom he has to kill, and whom in the world he has to envelop in.
Something that's in stark contrast to his maker.
Lestat de Lancourt, again, really probably one of my favorite characters in literature, or one of my favorite characters in fantasy, fantasy media in general. Sam Reid's portrayal is just incredible. Again, seeing Sam Reid for the first time I actually got to experience it was in a movie called Belle. I knew he was really up to the task, and he definitely shows that here. He is unabashedly himself. He is very much again an outspoken character, but in this particular case, he is very much in the sense of he's out, he's loud, he's proud.
Mm-hmm. Sam Reid very explore the horrific nature of being a vampire,
Mm-hmm.
but also bring it down to such a very mundane level is a balancing act into itself.
The way that he moves his hands, how he emphasizes words, his ability to go in and out inflections when he's using the French language, which is a core aspect of Lestat. It's just incredible to see on screen. I just absolutely love every moment I actually get to see him on the in the show, and I'm really geeked and really hyped to actually see what he brings in when the series actually shifts towards his perspective, and we're going to basically the Lestat show in general. But again, I cannot seeing any more praises for Sam Reid, and I'm so happy he was cast in this role.
Character of Daniel Malloy.
Yes. The hard-hitting journalist. I feel as though when it comes to when the first adaptation of Daniel was brought to us, played by Christian Slater, I really do enjoyed him in that sense. But what Eric Bogosian brings to the character of Daniel Malloy is an individual that is hard-hitting and battle worn out, specifically in the sense of he's seen it all, done it all, and now he is back into the trenches of where it actually started his entire career, or really essentially started his real life afterwards. Now with the character in this case, they did yet again
a major change.
A major change. In this case, he's not the young man that we were introduced into the books. In this case, because of the way they decided to do the show, this is an elderly individual, and they bring all those particular aspects into this character on top of what he's actually supposed to bring into the heart of this interview.
Mm-hmm. He really at multiple instances from when the series began and where the season 2 ends, there's a person who really knows how to control the room.
Exactly.
His dry wit and humor really really shows strong bite and commentary to when he's interviewing Louis, basically bringing it down to earth, like Dre understanding what the vampire world is like through through Louis' eyes, but also recontextualizing to the sense of you can start seeing more of the humanized and appeal through Daniel's perspective as well. Claudia, very complex role from the books and from the 1994 adaptation.
That one being played by Kirsten Dunst, outstanding job when she helmed it. Of course, I get a little bit closer towards where the original adaptation, where the books lie, concerning that character was originally played by originally supposed to be played by a much younger actress, i.e., individuals who were in the tender age of 5. Of course, they really couldn't really do that specifically for reasons, but this particular adaptation decided to do the role. Just like Louis, where they again changed the character to being black to suit the compliments of the character of Louis. This one being played by 2 particular actresses is something that any particular show would have had troubles with, but I feel as though because of the dynamics of the actresses who were playing the role of Claudia and the direction they were being given, turned out to be some of the best stuff that I've seen on television today.
But Bailey Bass and Delainey Haynes, they both, they're playing the same character.
They both play
same character, but in 2 different periods of their lives.
Exactly, 2 different periods of lives, but at the same time still feels connected to one another, as if this is the individual who's just growing into themselves. But when the character is being helmed by Bailey Bass, there's such a raw and an engaging force that is brought towards an individual who has to live their life forever in this adolescent stage. And then when Delainey Hayes takes over, you truly see the individual the grown woman who's trapped within the body, trying to emphasize who she truly is to the world in both mortal sense and the vampiric sense.
Now, even though these 2 actresses do a fantastic job of what they're given, I do still, though, because of the nature of the character itself, there is a little bit more of a layer of nuance that is missing from the original story that really could have added a lot more complexity to an already very complicated situation of being a vampire as a child. But there is a lot more of a tragic sense if it was considered they did decide to do a lot more faithfully. And this was a very similar situation to the other major character of the story of Zaman.
Well, this one actually still brought. It's interesting because I feel as though with the character being played by
Assad Zaman.
Yeah, Assad Zaman. I feel as though he totally still embodies everything I really wanted in that character. Again, the character of Armand is such an interesting individual that you grow to you hate to love or love to hate.
Now, with the character, you do explore even more of the capabilities of what Anne Rice's vampires are capable of.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more dangerous perspective into that world and how very badly they can mess up people's lives.
And very grand scales.
Yeah, and Armand can be considered very much as an antagonistic figure to the extent, and I was like the way that when the show introduced the character, it is they almost do what is considered like a switch around.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhat of a little twist, but
a beta switch.
In a sense. But it's a bait and switch that pays off very well once he is fully introduced.
Exactly. I feel as though this particular actor, takes what he's given and runs with it, and he does it extremely well. Even though I still would have preferred, because I feel as though this is the third adaptation, or the third adaptation where we saw this particular character brought to screen. First being played by Antonio Banderas, and then in Queen of Damn, I forgot where that actress was supposed to be was called. But again, I feel as though this one, in a lot of respects, is very faithful in the way that character is being being supposed to present themselves. If only again they
did a lot more, like similar to on Claudia's take.
And Louis.
He was supposed to be a little bit more younger, much more younger.
Mm-hmm. It was again,
a teenager, which.
Especially
when he deals with his history, it's a lot more. It's a very, very serious past that really does kind of like bring to light a lot of the decisions that this character does. But there is like some nuances are lost because of the mere fact that AMC just wasn't willing to go there.
Exactly.
And talk about antagonistic figures. Let's talk about Ben Daniels' take on Santiago.
Oh my! Well, this was whatever. I love almost everything this man does.
Ben Daniels is one of those great characters.
He is.
That just
he gives what he what he's going to give, and he delivers it beautifully.
One, because I think though he knows how to really ground a level of campiness that
never goes over the top to the extent that you just don't it throws you out, but he centers itself in an area where it's like it's camp, but it's believable camp.
I feel as though he's more compared to as a more edgier take on John Withers.
Yeah.
Him leading that troupe of vampires. that theater.
Yeah, the Theater de Vampire.
Very wild stuff. Very traumatic stuff near the end. That really shows off a level of dangerousness to the world of the vampires that they're living in, but also, like in some ways, like that I like the picture and the portrayal of that actor, and the portrayal of this character in this iteration. Feels though how they decided to end the story where they end the story of Enter the Vampire. I have to admit the 1994 film did a little bit better on that response.
At least on the grander scale of the aftermath of what happened in Perry.
And overall production. So the show is show-run and created by Rolin Jones, who was able to adapt and write his novel through a contemporary lens that is still able to be faithful to the thematic themes of the story. When AMC decided to do this immortal universe, clearly they were trying to adapt as much as possible, and clearly when they thought about adapting and doing Interview with Vampire first, you can clearly show that they really put a lot of their budget into this show as compared to what is looking like from the others.
Full disclosure, I tried watching Mayfair Witches. It did not take for me. I did not. Completely reversed on how I feel about this show, Interview with the Vampire, is the complete dumpster fire that I feel is what happened on that show. I feel as though the individuals who were helming the reins on this show should have worked on that one. But specifically when we look at Interview the Vampire, the production value, the costuming, the makeup design.
Yeah, how they bring to life the many time periods.
It's so unreal in a lot of sense. It just they really suck you into the story.
It's a very through a cinematic lens on what AMC is able to do. This is you can clearly tell that the Immortal Universe is AMC's next big ticket. After doing The Walking Dead for so many years.
When you look at how they really express what it actually looks like and feels to be a vampire, I do enjoy a lot of what they do. They deal with it, the way that they have their eyes, both being practical and VFX, being able to do the dilation of the pupils and the irises, the way they have their fangs, the music, very of the time period. Very much a great emphasis on the thoughts and feelings of the characters, especially when you look at music through the lens of Lestat, who is very intertwined with that concept. I feel as though it's very beautiful, it's very hauntingly romantic in a lot of ways.
They really do that very melodramatic themes. That's very explored. It's very much like a vampire soap opera.
Yeah, man, at the end of the day, bare bones, that's exactly what we're getting. And I'm here for that. Is that those are some of the best vampire genre fare that we got in quite some time.
I would say that Interview the Vampire from AMC is amazing.
Yes. I didn't see when
We always hope.
Exactly. We always hoped that the show was going to be like this. I knew in my heart that this story that Anne Rice had developed was definitely bound for greatness, and everyone deserves to see it in that same sense. So I'm very much here for season 3 when we turn over to the vampire Lestat and Sam Reid taking the reins in full flow in his full glory.
Yeah, very compelling stuff here. So there was a review for AMC's Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire.
Please, if you're a fan of what Anne Rice has created, that being the Vampire Chronicles, the Mayfair Witches, or the Wolf Chronicles, she made so much material out there, and I hope that a lot of it gets adapted. I know one of them probably really won't, concerning for reasons, but for what we got from here, are you geeked out? Do you want to see as much vampire genre fare, especially Vampire Chronicles content, just like us? Let us know.
And also, be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment below, and also explore other social media outlets of Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd. So, my name is Adam.
Nah, man.
This has been a Seeking Media Productions.
See y'all later.
See you.